What's going on, Port fans? Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we're going to be previewing Port Adelaide's round 17 clash against the Brisbane Lions this Sunday twilight at 4:10 p.m. at the Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a big game for these two clubs with massive ramifications if either team loses. It's going to be a big one, so let's get straight into it and preview round 17. I'm all up and about, Port fans. It's going to be a big game this weekend, but first of all, I'll start off with saying a big congratulations to Connor Rosie, Joel Garner, Jake Patmore, Zach Butters, and Xavier Dersma, who have all signed on contract extensions, keeping them at the club for a couple of years longer. Jake Patmore having a one-year contract extension as well. Big news for the youngsters of Port Adelaide. The future is looking very rosy indeed, and I'm super excited to see them jump on board. They've already been very welcoming on the channel as well, with a couple of open training chats. So it's very exciting to see them, so I look forward to getting to know them a little bit more and seeing how they develop on the field, but also off it as well. I'm celebrating by wearing my cream of the crop clothing Connor Rosie top, as you can see there. So that is a big announcement for the football club, and that's a huge get, especially with how well those youngsters have been throughout 2019 so far. But let's get into this preview. It's going to be a big game, as I keep saying. Definitely with these two teams, the most exciting teams in the competition, I'd say. When they're both on, these two are very nice to the eye. Indeed, especially if you're watching on TV or at the ground, they just perform so well, as shown by this round three clash they had earlier in the year. Both teams scoring just about 100 points each, and it was just a brilliant game to watch. And this time they're both coming off really impressive wins. Port Adelaide beating the Crows by 57 points in showdown 47, and the Brisbane Lions bet the Giants comfortably by 20 odd points in the end in Sydney as well, which is a huge win for them. I think Brisbane are announcing themselves. They're very much showcasing what they are. They're really developing the young talent, and that young talent that they've developed over the couple of years prior in their darker seasons are really starting to show how good the potential of this side is. So this is a big game for Port Adelaide, a big game for Brisbane. But let's dive into Brisbane a little bit more, have a look and see exactly what they've done so far. So they're 10 wins and 5 losses. They've started the year really well. Lost to Carlton a couple of weeks ago, really thinking they weren't going to be a big threat anymore after that loss, but they've refocused after the bye and come back firing. Top 4 at the moment, which is huge, for a team. In on this game alone, they have never won at the Adelaide Oval against either Port Adelaide or Adelaide. It's going to be one of those games where travelling for Brisbane, it's completely different to travelling to Spotless Stadium where they were against the Giants. I think it's actually called Giant Stadium now, but playing against the Giants there, it's a totally different atmosphere. Playing in front of 40,000 people this weekend. Very passionate crowd in Port Adelaide. They haven't done it for a little while now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that as such a young side they are. And also, without Eric Hipwood and Luke Hodge by the seams of it, they both are very unlikely to get up, but will be given to the very last chance to be able to play Sunday. Obviously, the Lions having a 7-day break, Port Adelaide having an 8-day break. Give them as much opportunity as possible to get up and play. Let's dive into this game now. It's really interesting to see how these two teams are going to play exactly against each other. They're polar opposites in terms of how they want to play. Ken Hinkley has obviously stated that they want to play fast, attacking, brutal football. No matter what the opposition does, they're going to try and launch that against any defence. Brisbane were doing that earlier in the year. Then they showcased that obviously they were leaking a lot of goals, and that was their probable downfall. And now they're number 2 in the league for defensive turnovers and being able to apply opposition pressure and slingshotting it down the other end and scoring heavily on the opposition. Which Port Adelaide are, funnily enough, one of the worst in the competition for turnovers. So this will be it's an interesting concept to see exactly how that pans out. But this is going to become an absolute blockbuster. I'm tipping it now. This is going to be the best game of the round. These two teams in the top 8. They're both very exciting to watch, and if it's anything to go by round 3, where it was just as exciting up at the Gabba, Adelaide was supposed to be pretty good conditions on Sunday afternoon. This might pan out to be one of the best games of the year, and if Port Adelaide can get up, it's monstrous for their season, They break the inconsistency hoodoo that has been hovering over them since about round 7. They need to break this for their own good, more so than for the season, because otherwise they'll get into this slump of win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. They can't afford that. And with a team like Brisbane who are up and coming, they're going to slip and slide. We know that. Can they win a premiership? Maybe. They're definitely now in the conversation, but Port Adelaide shouldn't be discounted for the fact that their stats on paper are the best in the league. The team is in firing condition, not too many injuries, and they'll have Boat come back this week, which is a monstrous inclusion, especially when you've got such a high-class midfield like Brisbane do. But for Port Adelaide, I'll focus on the midfield because I think this is where the game's going to be won or lost, and Port Adelaide have to focus on Lachie Neale. He got 43 disposals in round 3 up at the Gabba, and he averages 37 disposals against Port Adelaide in the last 5 games. That is massive numbers. Obviously, those were against Fremantle, so playing for Fremantle, so that won't be counting too much for Brisbane, but there's his own personal form. He likes playing against Port Adelaide. So when you have players like Ollie Wines, you're going to have Travis Boak, Robbie Gray going through the middle there at some stage. Sam Gray has been going to the middle a little bit more over the last couple of weeks. They're going to have to try and focus on shutting him down, but without, trying to discourage their game. Because if you can break down Lachie Neale's influence on the contest, then Port Adelaide will be able to focus on their own influence from their midfield, from the outside runners in Dersma. Bonner has been running quite well. Amon's in career best form. Darcy Byrne-Jones from the half back line. If they can keep running, then you're going to shut off the opposition. Uncontested possessions, Port Adelaide are number 1 in the league. If they can do what they did against the Crows to the Brisbane Lions, they're going to be able to really cement their presence on field early. And if we can get a good start, then Brisbane will be quite shocked. You can get them off balance, and that's where you can really go at them and try and put as much pressure as possible. Don't discount the Lions, though. They've got some great youngsters in their side. McGluggage has been awesome. Zorko has been phenomenal for them all season. Eric Hipwood until his injury. And I think one of the main things for Brisbane is their consistency has been fantastic, and they just keep going. And with their top 4 aspirations now back in calculations, they're going to definitely be able to focus on the ability to, they've got teams that coming out after Port Adelaide they can definitely beat. So if Brisbane can get over the line here against Port, they're opening up their season wide open. I reckon behind Geelong and West Coast, Brisbane are right there in that bracket of premiership calculations. And I reckon they can do it. Probably a bit too young, but the Bulldogs did it. Richmond did it. Anything can happen with the Brisbane Lions. But for now, this weekend, a big task, travelling to Adelaide Oval. I don't see it happening. I'm actually being a little bit biased. But at the same time, I really do feel that Port Adelaide can get the job done. Matchups galore. I think the main matchups you'll see will be Lysette versus Martin. Lysette, obviously, with that PCL niggle that he had during the showdown against Martin. We'll see how that pans out. Dixon versus Andrews is a massive matchup for Brisbane Lions. If they're going to be able to shut down Port's ability to score, then they're going to have to shut down Charlie, because I reckon a big game is due for him. Quite a showdown, but his presence is the biggest influence on any contest. And his ability to continue to hunt and pressurise. He doesn't have to take the big marks, doesn't have to kick the big goals. His influence on the contest is second to none, and I think Andrews will have his work cut out if Dixon can get on the early ball and kick a couple of goals. But yeah, his presence in the contest is second to none, and that's going to be a big key matchup this weekend, especially with the youngsters of Butters, Rosie and Dersma roaming around at his legs. Robbie Gray, Sam Gray, Ebert as well. It's going to be a very interesting matchup, especially down forward, and it goes for the same at the other end. Lincoln McCarthy, Charlie Cameron, they've got a very Mosquito-like fleet going down in their forward half, which Port Adelaide are going to have to match up on and really try and keep them out of the game, not influence anything. Because when they switch on, they're very hard to beat. Port Adelaide's selection this week, I'd suggest probably be the one change. Boat comes back in. Sam Pepper unfortunately goes out. I think like for like change. You've got to do that. As simple as that. We can't be dropping someone like a Butters, Motlop, outside runners for an inside mid. We know a balance doesn't quite work out when you've got a stock-heavy midfield who can't quite, they don't have the pace that those other guys have. And I think purely on balance, Sam Pepper goes out, unfortunately. He did have a great game in the showdown, but I think, unfortunately, his yeah, the balance will unfortunately push him out. Prediction for the game, I'm thinking Port Adelaide will win. I actually believe that we're going to break the hoodoo of the inconsistency and get a couple of wins in a row, which is very rare. We haven't had that since round 5 and 6, so I think that will be the case, especially at home. If it was at the Gabba, it'd be a different story, but we've had that story before. I think now we're going to, in the front of a very strong crowd, we'll do the job. Well, Port fans, thank you very much for watching this preview. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new for plenty more Port Adelaide content. Comment below what you think of this weekend's game and who's going to win. My name's Anthony, and as always, Port fans, go with me.